The autumn morning of October 14th, 2014 began like any other Tuesday in Dayton, Ohio. The air carried that crisp, cool bite that signals summer's definitive end, and maple leaves painted the sidewalks in shades of amber and rust. Susan Rogers stood at her kitchen window, watching her daughter Emily chase a squirrel across their small backyard, her laughter cutting through the quiet suburban morning like music. "Emily, 5 minutes, sweetheart. Your cereal's getting soggy," Susan called out, her voice carrying that particular blend of affection and urgency that only mothers seem to master. Emily Rogers was 9 years old, with strawberry blonde hair that caught the sunlight and freckles scattered across her nose like constellations. She bounded back into the house, her purple backpack already slung over one shoulder, decorated with patches of cartoon characters, and a small keychain her grandmother had given her for good luck. "Mom, can Ashley come over after school? We have that science project about the solar system, remember?" Emily asked between spoonfuls of cereal, milk dribbling slightly down her chin. Susan wiped it away with a napkin, smiling. "Of course, honey. I'll pick you both up at 3:30. Don't forget your lunchbox this time, okay? Last week you left it in your locker and came home starving." Emily giggled, that pure, unfiltered sound of childhood joy. "I won't forget, I promise." The Rogers family lived on Maple Street, a quiet residential area on the east side of Dayton, where neighbors knew each other's names and kids still rode bikes until the streetlights came on. Susan's husband, Michael, had left for his construction job before dawn, as he did every weekday. The family wasn't wealthy, but they were comfortable, happy, rooted in their community. At exactly 7:42 a.m., Susan walked Emily to the front door. The elementary school was only 4 blocks away, a straight shot down Maple, a right turn on Oakwood Avenue, and the school sat at the end of the street, its brick facade and colorful playground visible from the intersection. "Remember, straight to school. No detours to look at dogs or stop at the park," Susan reminded her as she had done countless times before. "I know, Mom," Emily replied with that exasperated tone children use when they think their parents worry too much. She hugged Susan tightly around the waist. "Love you. Love you more, baby. Have a great day." Susan watched from the doorway as Emily walked down the sidewalk, her purple backpack bouncing with each step. Other children from the neighborhood were also making their way towards school. The Peterson twins from 2 houses down, old Mr. Chen's grandson visiting from Cleveland. It was a normal morning in a normal neighborhood where nothing bad ever happened. Susan closed the door at 7:45 a.m. It would be the last time she saw her daughter for nearly 10 years. By 4:15 p.m., Susan's worry had transformed from mild concern into something darker, more visceral. Emily hadn't been at school for pickup. Ashley's mother, Jennifer, had waited with Susan, both of them scanning the crowd of children pouring out of Oakwood Elementary's main entrance. "Maybe she went home with another friend," Jennifer suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. Susan's hands trembled as she dialed Michael's number. "Mike, Emily wasn't at school. I'm heading to the office now to talk to the principal." The school secretary, Mrs. Patterson, a kind woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a beaded chain, pulled up the attendance records with fingers that suddenly felt too slow. Her face paled as she looked at the screen. "Mrs. Rogers, Emily was marked absent today. She never arrived this morning." The words didn't make sense. Susan's brain refused to process them. "That's impossible. I walked her out the door myself. I watched her go down the street." Principal Davidson, a tall man with graying temples and a usually calm demeanor, immediately called the Dayton Police Department. Within 20 minutes, 2 patrol officers arrived at the school, Officer James Chen and Officer Maria Santos, both veterans of the force who had seen their share of missing child cases. "Mrs. Rogers, I need you to take a deep breath and tell me exactly what happened this morning," Officer Santos said gently, her notepad already open. Susan recounted every detail. The breakfast, the conversation about the science project, Emily's purple backpack, the time she left the house, the direction she walked. Her voice cracked multiple times, and Michael, who had rushed from the construction site still wearing his work boots caked with dried mud, kept his arm around her shoulders. "Did Emily seem upset about anything? Any changes in behavior recently?" Officer Chen asked. "No, nothing. She was happy, excited about school. She's a good student, loves her friends." "This doesn't make sense." Susan's eyes were red, her mascara starting to smudge. By 6 p.m., police had established a perimeter and begun canvassing the neighborhood. Officers knocked on every door along Emily's route to school. Mr. Henderson, who lived 3 houses down, remembered seeing Emily that morning around 7:45. She waved at me. I was getting my newspaper. She seemed fine, just walking to school like always. But after that, nothing. No one else reported seeing her. At 7:30 p.m., as darkness settled over Dayton and the temperature dropped, a police K-9 unit made a discovery that turned Susan's legs to water. In Lincoln Park, an abandoned recreational area 2 blocks off Emily's normal route, officers found her purple backpack lying next to a rusted swing set. The bag was open, its contents scattered: a math workbook, colored pencils, a half-eaten granola bar, and the lucky keychain from her grandmother. The police immediately treated it as a potential abduction scene. Yellow crime scene tape went up, and forensic teams combed every inch of the area. But there were no signs of struggle, no footprints in the soft earth except those of the officers themselves, no witnesses, no surveillance cameras in the area. Detective Robert Morrison, a 20-year veteran of the Dayton PD with a reputation for solving difficult cases, took charge of the investigation. He stood in the park as portable lights were set up, casting harsh shadows across the abandoned playground equipment. The swing set creaked in the wind, a haunting sound that seemed to underscore the horror of the moment. "I want every piece of video footage from every business, home security camera, and traffic cam within a 2-mile radius," Morrison ordered his team. Someone saw something. They always do. But as the hours turned into days, that certainty began to waver. The community response was immediate and overwhelming. By Thursday morning, volunteer search parties had formed, with hundreds of Dayton residents combing through parks, alleys, abandoned buildings, and wooded areas. Susan and Michael appeared on local news stations, Susan clutching Emily's favorite stuffed rabbit, her voice breaking as she pleaded directly into the camera. "Emily, baby, if you can hear this, Mommy and Daddy love you so much. We're looking for you. Please come home. And if someone has my daughter, please, I'm begging you, let her go. She's just a little girl. She needs her family." The police set up a tip line that was flooded with calls. Most led nowhere. Misidentifications, well-meaning but mistaken witnesses, and unfortunately, several cruel hoaxes that Detective Morrison handled with barely contained rage. Psychics called offering their services. Conspiracy theorists posted online about government cover-ups and trafficking rings. The noise was deafening, but none of it brought Emily home. 1 week after Emily's disappearance, the FBI joined the investigation under the assumption that she had been taken across state lines. Special Agent Linda Frazier, a specialist in child abduction cases, set up operations in the Dayton field office. She had short, dark hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation for never giving up on a case. "The statistics aren't encouraging," Agent Frazier told the Rogers family in a private meeting, her voice professionally gentle but honest. "When a child disappears without witnesses, without a clear abductor, the first 48 hours are critical. We're past that now, but that doesn't mean we stop looking." Michael's jaw clenched. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we pursue every lead, no matter how small. But I need you both to prepare yourselves for a long process. This might not be resolved quickly." Susan's hand found Michael's, their fingers interlocking with desperate pressure. "I don't care how long it takes. We'll never stop looking for our daughter." By November, as the Ohio weather turned bitter and the first snow began to fall, the massive volunteer searches had dwindled. The news media moved on to other stories. The FBI investigation continued, but with fewer resources as months passed without new leads. Emily's face appeared on missing children websites, on milk cartons, on billboards along Interstate 75. The reward for information grew to $50,000, funded by community donations and a fundraiser organized by Emily's school. But there were no credible sightings, no ransom demands, no bodies found. Emily Rogers had simply vanished, as if she had walked into that October morning and strayed out of existence. Detective Morrison kept Emily's case file on his desk for years, refusing to let it be archived into the cold case basement. He reviewed it periodically, looking for something he might have missed, some connection he hadn't made. But the truth remained frustratingly elusive. Susan Rogers did exactly what she told Agent Frazier she would do. She never stopped looking. She never moved from the house on Maple Street, maintaining Emily's bedroom exactly as it had been the morning of October 14th, 2014. The purple curtains, the collection of stuffed animals arranged on the bed, the solar system poster on the wall for that science project that was never completed. Every night, without fail, Susan lit a candle and placed it in the front window, a beacon calling her daughter home. The winter of 2014 stretched endlessly for the Rogers family. Snow accumulated on Dayton's streets, covering the city in a blanket of white that felt suffocating rather than peaceful. Christmas came and went, a hollow, painful affair. Susan couldn't bring herself to take down Emily's stocking from the mantel, and Michael worked double shifts at the construction company, unable to face the emptiness of their home. By January 2015, the investigation had slowed to a crawl. Detective Morrison still received occasional tips, but they invariably led nowhere. A woman in Kentucky claimed she'd seen Emily at a rest stop. The girl turned out to be someone else's daughter. A man in Pennsylvania reported seeing a child matching Emily's description getting into a van. The lead evaporated when security footage showed it was a family picking up their niece. The FBI's involvement diminished as resources were redirected to cases with fresher leads. Agent Frazier called Susan once a month with updates, though the conversations grew shorter and more painful each time. "We haven't forgotten Emily," Frazier would assure her. "The case remains open and active." But Susan could hear the unspoken truth in the agent's voice. Without new evidence, without witnesses, without any break in the case, Emily Rogers was becoming another statistic in America's heartbreaking catalog of missing children. Michael and Susan's marriage began to fracture under the weight of grief. They processed their loss differently. Michael threw himself into work, staying late at construction sites, volunteering for weekend projects, anything to avoid the crushing silence of their home. Susan became obsessive, spending hours online in missing children forums, studying every reported sighting across the country, cross-referencing databases, creating elaborate spreadsheets of possibilities. "Sue, you need to sleep," Michael would plead, finding her at 3 a.m. hunched over her laptop, eyes red and burning. "You're going to make yourself sick." "What if tonight is the night I find something?" she'd reply, never looking away from the screen. "What if I go to bed and miss the one clue that brings her home?" By summer 2015, their differences became insurmountable. Michael moved into an apartment across town, unable to live in the house that had become a shrine to their missing daughter. The divorce was finalized in October, exactly 1 year after Emily's disappearance. They didn't fight over assets or custody. There was nothing left to fight about. The house went to Susan. Michael took almost nothing. "I still love you," Michael told her on the courthouse steps, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I love Emily, but I can't live in the past anymore. I'm drowning, Sue." Susan watched him walk away, understanding but unable to forgive. He had given up. She never would. Detective Morrison retired in 2017 after 25 years with the Dayton Police Department. On his last day, he visited Susan at the house on Maple Street, carrying Emily's case file in a worn cardboard box. "I'm passing this to Detective Sarah Brennan," he told Susan, sitting in her living room that still smelled faintly of the candles she burned every night. "She's young, sharp, determined. She'll take good care of Emily's case." Susan accepted a cup of coffee she'd poured, but didn't drink. Her hands had aged in 3 years. They looked like they belonged to someone much older, weathered by stress and sleepless nights. "Do you think we'll ever know what happened to her, Detective?" Morrison was silent for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "I think that in this job you learn that some mysteries take years to solve. Some take decades, and some—" He paused, unable to finish the sentence. "Some never get solved." Susan finished for him, her voice flat. "You can say it. I've thought about it every day for 3 years. I never stopped believing we'd find answers," Morrison said firmly. "And I need you to keep believing too. The moment we stop believing is the moment we truly lose." After he left, Susan sat in Emily's room, running her fingers over the stuffed animals, the school books, the drawings pinned to the bulletin board. She had memorized every detail of this room, could navigate it in complete darkness. It was the last place where Emily had been truly, completely herself. Detective Sarah Brennan proved to be as dedicated as Morrison promised. She reviewed the case files multiple times, re-interviewed witnesses, examined evidence with fresh eyes. In early 2018, she convinced the department to allocate funds for new forensic analysis of items found in Lincoln Park, hoping that advances in DNA technology might reveal something missed in 2014. The results came back inconclusive. There were multiple DNA profiles on Emily's backpack, her own, Susan's, classmates from school, but nothing that indicated an abductor. It was as if Emily had simply set down her backpack and walked away into thin air. Susan's life became a ritual of remembrance and searching. She worked part-time as a bookkeeper for a local accounting firm, just enough to keep the house and pay bills. The rest of her time was devoted to Emily. She maintained a Facebook page called Bring Emily Rogers Home, with over 15,000 followers, posting regular updates, sharing age progression photos created by forensic artists, showing what Emily might look like as she grew older. The community hadn't forgotten. Every October 14th, Dayton held a vigil for Emily in Lincoln Park. Hundreds of people would gather, holding candles, listening to Susan speak about hope and perseverance, about never giving up on the missing. Local news stations covered it every year, and for a day or two, Emily's face would be back on television, in newspapers, trending on social media. But then life would move on, as it always does, and Emily would fade back into the background noise of America's countless unsolved cases. Michael remarried in 2019, a kind woman named Patricia who worked as a nurse at Miami Valley Hospital. Susan saw the announcement on social media and felt a strange mixture of emotions: betrayal, anger, but also a distant hope that Michael had found some measure of peace. He deserved that, even if she couldn't claim it for herself. They spoke occasionally, awkward phone calls on Emily's birthday or the anniversary of her disappearance. Michael would ask if there were any updates. Susan would say no. They would sit in painful silence, connected by their shared loss, but separated by how they'd chosen to survive it. "I think about her every day," Michael confessed during one call in 2020, during the early days of the pandemic when the world felt like it was ending. "I dream about her. In my dreams, she's always 9 years old, always smiling. I can't imagine her any other way." "I can," Susan replied softly. "I imagine her as a teenager now, 16 years old. I imagine what she'd look like, what music she'd listen to, whether she'd have boyfriends, what college she'd want to attend. I imagine entire lives for her, Michael. It's the only way I can keep her alive." The pandemic changed everything and nothing. The world locked down, but Susan's search never stopped. She attended virtual support groups for families of missing children, connecting with parents across the country who understood her pain in ways no one else could. There was comfort in shared suffering, in knowing she wasn't alone in her endless vigil. Detective Brennan continued working the case, though resources became even more limited as the police department dealt with budget cuts and staffing shortages. She would call Susan every few months, usually to say there was nothing new, but occasionally to follow up on a tip that had come through the national database. In 2021, there was a brief surge of hope when a young woman in Florida claimed to be Emily Rogers. She had the right age, similar features, and a story about childhood amnesia following a traumatic event. Susan's heart nearly burst when Brennan called with the news, but DNA testing proved the woman was not Emily. She was a troubled young person seeking attention, or perhaps genuinely confused about her own identity. The disappointment nearly broke Susan. For 3 days, she didn't get out of bed, didn't answer the phone, didn't light the candle in the window. On the 4th day, she forced herself up, showered, and resumed her routine. Giving up wasn't an option. It would never be an option. By 2023, Emily had been missing for 9 years. She would be 18 now, legally an adult. The age progression photos showed a beautiful young woman with her mother's eyes and her father's determined jaw. Susan had them printed and framed, hanging them alongside Emily's childhood pictures, creating a visual timeline of a life half lived and half imagined. The house on Maple Street had aged along with Susan. The paint was fading, the roof needed repairs, the garden had become overgrown. Neighbors had moved away, new families moved in, and fewer people recognized the significance of the address. To them, it was just another house on a quiet street. They didn't know about the bedroom that remained frozen in 2014, about the candle that burned every night without fail. Susan turned 50 in March 2024, a milestone birthday that felt hollow. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gray streaks ran through her hair, deep lines etched her face, and her eyes held a permanent exhaustion that sleep could never cure. But beneath that weariness was something harder, more resilient, an unbreakable core of determination that had sustained her through nearly a decade of uncertainty and pain. She had survived every false lead, every dead end, every well-meaning person who suggested it was time to move on or find closure. How do you find closure when you don't know if your child is alive or dead? How do you move on when every stranger with strawberry blonde hair makes your heart stop? How do you let go when hope is the only thing keeping you breathing? Susan didn't have answers to these questions. She only knew how to keep going, one day at a time, maintaining her vigil, keeping Emily's memory alive, waiting for the miracle that logic and statistics said would never come. On April 3, 2024, Detective Brennan's phone rang at 9:47 a.m. The number showed as a Cincinnati area code. The voice on the other end belonged to a social worker named Marcus Thompson from the Haven House Shelter in downtown Cincinnati. "Detective Brennan, I'm calling about a young woman who came to our facility last night. She's 19 years old and she says..." Marcus paused, as if unable to believe what he was about to say. "She says she thinks she might be a child who went missing a long time ago. She doesn't know her real name, but she described being taken when she was 9 years old in Dayton, Ohio. She remembers October, maple leaves, and a purple backpack." Brennan's hand tightened on the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "What's her name? What does she look like?" "She's been living as Melissa Carter, strawberry blonde hair, green eyes, about 5'6". She has a small birthmark on her left shoulder blade shaped like a crescent moon," Brennan finished, her voice barely a whisper. She was looking at Emily Rogers' file, at the detailed physical description that included that exact birthmark. "Detective, I think you need to come to Cincinnati right now." Detective Sarah Brennan drove the 55 miles from Dayton to Cincinnati in what felt like both the longest and shortest hour of her life. Her hands gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity as she navigated Interstate 75 South, her mind racing faster than her speedometer. She had called her captain immediately after hanging up with Marcus Thompson, her voice shaking as she explained the situation. "Don't get ahead of yourself, Brennan," Captain Williams had cautioned. "We've had false leads before. The Carter girl could be confused, traumatized, or..." She described the birthmark, Captain. "The crescent moon shape on the left shoulder blade. That detail was never released to the public. It's not in any news reports or online databases. Only family and investigators know about it." The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. "Drive carefully. And Sarah, don't call Susan Rogers yet. Not until we're absolutely certain." But Brennan's gut, honed by 7 years of detective work, told her this was different. Every instinct screamed that after 9.5 years, Emily Rogers had finally surfaced. Haven House was a modest 2-story brick building in Cincinnati's Over-the-Rhine neighborhood, a shelter that provided temporary housing and services for homeless youth and trafficking survivors. Marcus Thompson met Brennan at the entrance, a tall African-American man in his 40s with kind eyes and the weary demeanor of someone who'd seen too much human suffering. "She's in the counseling room," Marcus said quietly, as he led Brennan through a hallway decorated with inspirational posters and artwork created by residents. "I should warn you, she's frightened, confused, and extremely fragile. She showed up at our door last night around 11 p.m., soaking wet from the rain, with just the clothes on her back and a small backpack." "Did she say how she got here?" Brennan asked, her detective instincts kicking into gear. "She took a Greyhound bus from somewhere in Kentucky, paid cash. She said she'd been planning this for months, saving money, waiting for the right moment." Marcus paused outside a door marked "Private, Counseling in Progress." "Detective, whatever happened to this girl, it's left deep scars. Tread carefully." Brennan nodded and entered the room. Sitting in a worn armchair near the window was a young woman who made Brennan's breath catch in her throat. She had strawberry blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, green eyes that held both fear and hope, and features that were hauntingly familiar despite being aged nearly a decade from the missing child photos Brennan had memorized. "Melissa?" Brennan said softly, using the name the young woman had been living under. "My name is Detective Sarah Brennan. I'm with the Dayton Police Department. Marcus called me because he thought I might be able to help you." The young woman looked up, her eyes searching Brennan's face. "Are you here because of Emily Rogers?" Brennan felt her heart skip. "Tell me why you think you might be Emily." The young woman's hands twisted together in her lap, a nervous gesture that reminded Brennan of how Susan Rogers fidgeted during stressful conversations. "I've always known something was wrong. The people I've been living with, Richard and Caroline Carter, they told me I was their daughter, that my name was Melissa, but I have these memories that don't match what they told me." "What kind of memories?" Brennan asked, pulling out her notebook but keeping her body language open and non-threatening. "I remember a different house, a different mother. I remember walking to school on a street with maple trees. I remember a purple backpack with cartoon characters on it. I remember," her voice cracked, "I remember being afraid in a park with old swings. I remember someone telling me my mother was sick, that I needed to come with them to see her. I remember getting into a car." Brennan's pulse quickened. "Do you remember what day this was?" "October. The leaves were falling. I remember the leaves." Tears began streaming down the young woman's face. "For years I thought these were just weird dreams. Richard and Caroline always got angry when I talked about them. They said I had an overactive imagination, that I was remembering movies or books, but they felt too real. They felt like memories. When did you start to suspect something was wrong? The young woman wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her worn sweatshirt. About a year ago, I was helping Caroline clean out the basement. We've moved so many times, Kentucky, Tennessee, back to Kentucky. She always said we had to move for Richard's work, but in the basement I found a box hidden behind some old furniture. Inside were newspaper clippings about a missing girl from Ohio, Emily Rogers. When I saw her picture, it was like looking into a mirror that showed the past. Brennan leaned forward slightly. What did you do? I confronted Caroline. She got hysterical, screaming that I was being ridiculous, that I was their daughter. Richard came home and they had this huge fight. That's when I knew for sure something was terribly wrong. I started researching online whenever they weren't home. I found websites about missing children. I saw Emily's picture, read her story. Everything matched my memories, the age, the location, the timeline. Why didn't you contact the police then? Brennan asked gently. The young woman's face crumpled. I was scared. Richard and Caroline were the only parents I'd known for almost 10 years. Part of me was terrified that I was wrong, that I was crazy. And part of me, she took a shaky breath. Part of me was afraid of what they might do if I tried to leave. They watched me constantly after I found those clippings. Richard took away my phone. Caroline started homeschooling me instead of letting me go to the local high school. I was a prisoner. How did you escape? Last week, Richard had a heart attack. He's in the hospital in Lexington. Caroline spent every day there with him, and for the first time in months, I was alone. I took what little cash I could find in the house, packed a bag, and walked to the bus station. I didn't know where else to go except Cincinnati. It's close to Dayton, and I thought maybe if I was closer I could figure out what to do. Brennan felt a surge of admiration for the young woman's courage and resourcefulness. Melissa, or whoever you are, you did the right thing coming here. You're safe now. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully. Do you have any identifying marks? Birthmarks? Scars? Anything that could help us confirm your identity? The young woman nodded slowly. I have a birthmark on my left shoulder blade. Caroline always said it was just a mole, but it's shaped weird, like a crescent moon. Brennan had to work to keep her voice steady. Would you be willing to let a medical professional examine that birthmark and document it? Yes, absolutely. And would you be willing to provide a DNA sample? It's just a cheek swab, completely painless. We could compare it to DNA on file from Emily Rogers' family. The young woman's eyes widened with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. How long would that take? For a preliminary comparison, if we expedite it, maybe 24 to 48 hours. Are you willing to wait here at Haven House while we process everything? I've waited almost 10 years to know the truth. I can wait 2 more days. Brennan immediately called for a forensic nurse and a crime scene technician. Within 2 hours, they had photographed the birthmark, which matched exactly with the description in Emily Rogers' file, and collected DNA samples. The young woman also agreed to be fingerprinted, though Brennan knew that Emily's prints on file were those of a 9-year-old and might not be conclusive. While they waited for the DNA results, Brennan conducted a thorough interview, documenting everything the young woman could remember. The details were sometimes hazy. Trauma and time had blurred some memories, but certain things remained crystal clear. She remembered a kitchen with yellow walls. She remembered a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Hoppers. She remembered her mother singing a specific lullaby. These were details that had never been publicly released. Brennan also immediately put out a bolo, be on the lookout for Richard and Caroline Carter, running their names through every database available. What she found made her blood run cold. Richard Carter had a sealed juvenile record from the 1980s. Caroline Carter wasn't Caroline Carter at all. She was Caroline Brennan, no relation to Sarah. A woman who had lost custody of her biological children in 2008 due to neglect and had been flagged in the system as potentially involved in an underground adoption network. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture of a criminal enterprise that had stolen children and sold them or placed them with couples desperate for children and willing to look the other way regarding paperwork. By the evening of April 4th, the FBI had been notified and agents were en route to Cincinnati. The case had escalated from a local missing person to a federal investigation into child trafficking and kidnapping across state lines. Agent Linda Frazier, now promoted to supervisory special agent, personally flew in from the FBI's Columbus field office. "Sarah, I remember this case," Frazier said when she arrived at Haven House. I worked it in 2014. Tell me everything. After Brennan's briefing, Fraser sat down with the young woman, introducing herself with a gentle professionalism born from decades of experience. I met your mother once, back when you first disappeared. Susan Rogers, she's an incredibly strong woman who never stopped looking for you. The young woman's eyes filled with tears. Is she? Is she okay? Does she still live in the same house? She never left, Fraser said softly. She kept your room exactly as it was. She lights a candle in the window every single night. For 9.5 years, she's been waiting for you to come home. The young woman broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. Marcus Thompson, who had remained present as her advocate, placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. It's okay to feel everything you're feeling. You're safe now. Whatever comes next, you're safe. On April 5th at 2:47 p.m., Detective Brennan's phone rang. It was the forensic lab calling with preliminary DNA results. Brennan stepped outside Haven House into the spring sunshine, her hand trembling as she answered. Detective Brennan, this is Dr. Patricia Young from the State Forensic Laboratory. We've completed the expedited DNA comparison you requested. And? Brennan could barely breathe. It's a match. Mitochondrial DNA confirms with 99.9% certainty that the young woman in your custody is the biological daughter of Susan Rogers. Detective, you found Emily Rogers. Brennan leaned against the building, her legs suddenly weak. 9.5 years. Thousands of hours of investigation. Countless dead ends. And finally, incredibly, Emily was found. Dr. Young, thank you. Please send me the official report immediately. Brennan walked back inside, where Agent Fraser was waiting, reading her expression instantly. Fraser nodded slowly, understanding. They entered the counseling room together where Emily, and they could finally call her Emily, was sitting with Marcus. Emily, Brennan said, her voice thick with emotion. The DNA results came back. You were right. Your name is Emily Ann Rogers. You were born on March 17, 2005 in Dayton, Ohio. Your mother is Susan Rogers. Your father is Michael Rogers. And you've been missing since October 14, 2014. Emily stood up, her whole body shaking. I was right. I wasn't crazy. I was right. You were absolutely right. And Emily, your mother has been looking for you every single day for almost 10 years. Would you like us to contact her? Emily nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Detective Sarah Brennan sat in her car outside Susan Rogers' house on Maple Street, staring at the familiar faded blue exterior she'd visited countless times over the past 7 years. It was 4:32 p.m. on April 5, 2024, and Brennan was about to deliver news that would either fulfill Susan's greatest hope or shatter what remained of her carefully maintained composure. The DNA results were conclusive, but Brennan knew that a decade of grief and false hope had made Susan Rogers simultaneously resilient and fragile. Agent Fraser sat in the passenger seat reviewing her notes. Are you ready for this? Susan's going to need time to process. This isn't just good news, it's going to be traumatic in its own way. Brennan nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the vehicle. The neighborhood looked much as it had in 2014, though some houses had new paint, new owners, new lives. But 847 Maple Street remained frozen in time, a monument to a mother's unwavering hope. Susan answered the door on the second knock, wearing faded jeans and an old sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. At 50 years old, she looked both younger and older than her age. Younger in her eyes, which still held that fierce determination, and older in the lines that mapped her face like rivers of grief. Detective Brennan? Susan's expression shifted immediately to concern. Is there news? Did something? Susan, may we come inside? Brennan interrupted gently. This is Agent Linda Fraser from the FBI. You may remember her from 2014. Susan's face went pale. In her experience, when police came to your door unannounced with serious expressions, it meant bad news. Oh God, you found her, didn't you? You found a body. No, Brennan said quickly, stepping forward. Susan, please, let's go inside and sit down. I promise you, this is not that kind of news. They settled in the living room, which Susan kept immaculately clean despite the worn furniture and outdated decorations. Photographs of Emily covered every surface. School pictures, birthday parties, casual snapshots of a smiling 9-year-old girl who had been frozen in time by tragedy. Susan sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Just tell me. Whatever it is, just tell me. I've survived almost 10 years of not knowing. I can survive whatever you're going to say. Brennan sat across from her, maintaining eye contact. On the night of April 3rd, a 19-year-old woman walked into a homeless shelter in Cincinnati. She told the social worker there that she believed she was a missing child from Dayton. She described memories of being taken in October, of maple trees and a purple backpack, of a house she couldn't quite remember but knew in her bones was home. Susan's breathing became shallow. "What are you saying?" "We conducted preliminary interviews and collected DNA samples. The results came back this afternoon." Brennan paused, letting the moment settle. "Susan, we found Emily. She's alive, she's safe, and she wants to see you." The silence that followed was profound. Susan sat completely still, as if movement might shatter the moment and reveal it as a cruel dream. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't blink, didn't look away from Brennan's face, searching for any sign of deception or uncertainty. "You're sure?" Susan whispered. "You're absolutely certain? Because I don't think I could survive another false lead. The girl in Florida nearly killed me." Agent Frazier leaned forward. "Susan, I reviewed the DNA results myself. The match is conclusive. I've also spent the last 2 days with Emily, talking to her, listening to her story. She knows things about your family that were never made public. She remembers Mr. Hoppers." Susan gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mr. Hoppers was the stuffed rabbit Emily had slept with every night, a detail the family had never shared with media, considering it too personal, too painful. "She's alive," Susan breathed, the words foreign on her tongue after so many years of uncertainty. "My baby is alive. Where is she? Can I see her? Is she okay? Was she hurt? Who took her?" The questions tumbled out in a torrent of desperate need. Brennan raised her hands gently. "Susan, Emily is physically healthy but emotionally fragile. She's been living with a couple named Richard and Caroline Carter, who moved her repeatedly across Kentucky and Tennessee. We believe they were part of an illegal adoption network, though we're still investigating the full scope of the operation. They took my daughter and just raised her? For 10 years? Susan's voice rose, anger breaking through the shock. "Where are they now? Are they in custody?" "Richard Carter is in a hospital in Lexington recovering from a heart attack. Caroline Carter is currently being detained by FBI agents. Both will face federal charges including kidnapping, child trafficking, and conspiracy." Frazier's voice was professionally calm but with an edge of satisfaction. "They're not going anywhere, Susan. They'll answer for what they did." Susan stood abruptly, pacing the small living room. "I need to see her. Right now. Where is she? Take me to her." "Susan, wait," Brennan said firmly but kindly. "Before you see Emily, there are some things you need to understand. She's been living as Melissa Carter for nearly a decade. The Carters were the only parents she's known since she was 9 years old. She's been psychologically manipulated, isolated, and controlled. This reunion is going to be complicated. I don't care how complicated it is. She's my daughter. I've been waiting." Susan's voice broke. "I've been waiting 9 years, 5 months, and 22 days. I lit a candle every single night. I never gave up. She has to know that. She has to know I never stopped looking." Frazier nodded. "She knows, Susan. We told her. But you need to prepare yourself. Emily isn't the 9-year-old girl you remember. She's a young woman now, 19 years old, shaped by experiences we're only beginning to understand. This reunion will be joyful, but it will also be painful, for both of you." Susan wiped her eyes, steadying herself. "When can I see her?" "We've arranged for the reunion to happen at Haven House tomorrow morning," Brennan explained. "Emily needs tonight to prepare herself emotionally. And Susan, I strongly recommend you bring someone for support. Is there anyone, family, friends, who could be with you?" Susan thought for a moment. "Michael. I need to call Michael. He deserves to know. He's her father, even if we're not married anymore." "Would you like me to contact him?" Brennan offered. "No, I'll do it." Susan picked up her phone with trembling hands. "This is something I need to tell him myself." After Brennan and Frazier left, Susan sat in the darkening living room, her phone in her lap, trying to find the words to tell her ex-husband that their daughter, their Emily, their miracle, was alive. She finally dialed his number at 6:15 p.m. "Sue, is everything okay?" Michael's voice was concerned. They rarely spoke outside of the anniversary of Emily's disappearance. "Michael, I need you to sit down. Are you somewhere you can sit down? You're scaring me. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Michael, they found her. They found Emily. She's alive." The silence on the other end stretched for so long Susan thought the call had dropped. Then she heard a choked sob, then another. Michael Rogers, the stoic construction worker who prided himself on never showing weakness, was crying. "How? he finally managed. Where? Are they sure? Susan explained everything Brennan had told her, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. When she finished, Michael was quiet again. I'll pick you up at 7 tomorrow morning, he said. We'll drive to Cincinnati together. Patricia will understand. Thank you, Mike. Sue? I'm sorry. For leaving, for giving up. I'm so sorry. You're here now. That's what matters. Emily needs both of us. That night, Susan didn't sleep. She stood in Emily's room, looking at the childhood belongings preserved like artifacts in a museum. The stuffed animals, the school projects, the clothes that would never fit the young woman Emily had become. She would need to change this room, she realized. Emily was 19 now, not 9. She would need space that reflected who she had become, not who she had been. At midnight, Susan lit the candle in the window as she had done for 426 consecutive nights. But this time the act felt different, less like a desperate beacon and more like a celebration. Tomorrow, Emily would finally come home. The morning of April 6th dawned clear and cool, with pale sunlight filtering through Cincinnati's downtown buildings. Haven House had arranged for the reunion to take place in their largest counseling room, with Marcus Thompson, Detective Brennan, Agent Frazier, and a trauma counselor named Dr. Rebecca Chen present to provide support. Emily had barely slept. She sat in her temporary room at the shelter, wearing clean clothes the staff had provided, jeans and a simple blue sweater, trying to imagine what her mother looked like now. She had studied photos online, found Susan's Facebook page with its endless posts about searching for her missing daughter, seen the aged face marked by years of grief. Are you ready? Dr. Chen asked gently, knocking on Emily's door at 9:45 a.m. I don't think you can ever be ready for something like this, Emily replied, her voice shaking. What if she's disappointed? What if I'm not what she expected? I'm not the little girl she lost. I don't even really remember being that person. Your mother knows that. She's had time to prepare. But Emily, I want you to know that whatever you're feeling, fear, guilt, anger, confusion, all of it is valid. There's no right way to feel in this situation. Emily nodded, taking a deep breath. Okay, I'm ready. Susan and Michael arrived at Haven House at 9:52 a.m., 8 minutes early despite trying to time their arrival perfectly. They sat in the waiting area, holding hands for the first time in 7 years, united by the impossible moment they were about to experience. Marcus Thompson greeted them, his warm smile radiating genuine happiness. Mr. and Mrs. Rogers, Emily is ready to see you. Before we go in, I want to remind you that this is going to be emotional for everyone. Take your time. There's no rush. This is your moment. He led them down the hallway to the counseling room. Through the partially open door, Susan caught a glimpse of strawberry blonde hair and nearly collapsed. Michael's arm around her waist kept her steady. Ready? Marcus asked. Susan nodded, unable to speak. The door opened fully, and there she was. Emily Rogers stood near the window, backlit by morning sun, looking so much like the child Susan remembered but transformed by time into a young woman. She had Susan's eyes, Michael's jawline, and an expression of such profound vulnerability that it broke and healed Susan's heart simultaneously. For a long moment, neither moved. They simply looked at each other across the room, trying to bridge a decade of absence with a single gaze. Then Emily spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom. That single word shattered Susan's composure. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps, and Emily met her halfway. They collided in an embrace that was part desperation, part disbelief, part pure relief. Susan held her daughter, her living, breathing, real daughter, and sobbed into her hair. You're here. You're really here. Oh my God, Emily, you're here. Susan repeated like a mantra, her hands running over Emily's back, her shoulders, her hair, as if confirming through touch what her eyes couldn't quite believe. Emily clung to her mother with equal intensity, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry I couldn't find you sooner. I tried to remember. I tried so hard. Shh, baby, no. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. You survived. You found your way back. That's all that matters. Susan pulled back just enough to look at Emily's face, her hands cupping her daughter's cheeks. Let me look at you. Oh, sweetheart, you're so beautiful. Michael approached slowly, his own face wet with tears. Emily, Pumpkin, it's Dad. Emily turned to him, and for a moment, uncertainty flickered across her face. Her memories of her father were hazier than those of her mother. He had left for work early that last morning, and she hadn't seen him before she disappeared. But then recognition sparked. Not from clear memory, but from something deeper, something genetic and unbreakable. "Dad," she said, and fell into his arms. The three of them stood together in that counseling room, holding each other and crying, while the professionals present discreetly wiped their own eyes. It was a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy that made every sleepless night, every false lead, every painful year worth enduring. The initial euphoria of the reunion gradually gave way to the complex reality of what came next. Emily, Susan, and Michael spent 3 hours together in that counseling room at Haven House, supervised by Dr. Rebecca Chen, who gently guided their conversation when emotions threatened to overwhelm them. Susan wanted to know everything, every detail of the past decade, every birthday Emily had celebrated, every milestone she'd experienced. But Dr. Chen carefully moderated, explaining that Emily needed time to process her own trauma before she could fully articulate her experiences. "Mom, there's so much I don't understand myself yet," Emily said, her voice trembling as she held Susan's hand. "For years I thought the Carters were my parents. They told me my name was Melissa. They moved us constantly. I went to 7 different schools in 9 years. I never had real friends because we'd leave just when I started to settle in." Michael leaned forward, his construction-worn hands clasped together. "Did they hurt you, sweetie? Did they? Did they treat you badly?" Emily considered the question carefully. "They weren't violent. Richard mostly ignored me. Caroline was controlling, obsessive about what I wore, what I ate, who I talked to. She homeschooled me the last 2 years, said public schools were dangerous. But physically? No. They didn't hit me or anything like that. Psychological abuse is still abuse," Dr. Chen interjected gently. "Isolation, control, gaslighting about your identity. These are serious forms of trauma, Emily. When did you start to remember?" Susan asked, squeezing Emily's hand. "When did you know something was wrong?" Emily's eyes grew distant, seeing something beyond the room. "I've always had these dreams. Fragments, really. A yellow kitchen. A song someone used to sing to me. A stuffed rabbit. For years, Caroline convinced me they were just my imagination. But about a year ago, I found newspaper clippings about a missing girl hidden in our basement. When I saw Emily Rogers' picture, it was like looking at a photograph of myself as a child. Everything suddenly made horrible sense. Why did they take you?" Michael's voice cracked with anguish. "What kind of people steal a child?" Agent Fraser, who had been observing from the corner of the room, spoke up. "That's what we're working to uncover, Mr. Rogers. The investigation is ongoing, but we believe Richard and Caroline Carter were part of a larger network involved in illegal adoptions and possibly child trafficking." Detective Brennan added, "We've been interviewing Caroline Carter since her arrest yesterday. She's been mostly uncooperative, but we've gathered some preliminary information. Richard Carter was involved with a man named Vincent Drayton in the early 2000s. Drayton ran what he called a private adoption service that placed children with couples willing to pay significant money and not ask questions about paperwork." Susan's face hardened. "They bought my daughter?" "We believe the Carters paid approximately $50,000 for Emily," Fraser confirmed, her voice sympathetic but professional. Caroline had lost custody of her biological children in 2008 and was deemed unfit to adopt through legal channels. Richard had a criminal record that also disqualified them. Vincent Drayton specialized in matching desperate couples with children obtained through various illegal means. "How did they get Emily?" Susan demanded. "How did they take her from the street in broad daylight without anyone seeing?" Emily spoke up quietly. "I remember now. There was a woman. Not Caroline. Someone else. She approached me in the park, the one with the old swings. She told me my mom had been in an accident, that she was in the hospital, that I needed to come with her right away. I was scared, and she seemed so concerned, so I followed her to a car. There was a man driving. They gave me something, a drink. They said it would calm me down. After that, everything is blurry until I woke up in a different place and Caroline was there calling me Melissa." Susan made a sound of pure anguish. Michael put his arm around her shoulders as she buried her face in her hands. "They used her love for me against her. They knew exactly what to say." "The woman who approached you," Brennan said, pulling out her tablet. "Can you describe her? We need to identify everyone involved in this network." Emily closed her eyes, concentrating. "Blonde hair, maybe 40 years old? She had a kind face. I remember thinking she looked like a teacher. She wore a blue jacket. The man driving was older, balding with a beard. I never saw them again after that day. We'll work with a forensic artist to create composite sketches," Fraser said, making notes. Every person involved in your abduction will be held accountable, Emily. I promise you that. Dr. Chen gently interrupted. I think we need to take a break. This is a lot of information and emotion to process. Susan, Michael, why don't you take Emily to get some lunch? There's a quiet cafe around the corner. Emily, would you be comfortable with that? Emily nodded, but Susan could see the uncertainty in her daughter's eyes. This was all happening so fast. 10 years of separation couldn't be bridged in a few hours, no matter how much love existed between them. They went to the cafe, a small family-owned Italian restaurant called Angelo's that Marcus Thompson had recommended. Sitting across from each other in a corner booth, the awkwardness that hadn't been present in the emotional reunion began to surface. Do you like Italian food? Susan asked, then immediately felt foolish. She didn't know what her daughter liked anymore. She didn't know anything about the person Emily had become. Emily smiled weakly. I do. Caroline. She paused, the name feeling wrong on her tongue now. The woman who raised me used to make spaghetti sometimes. It was one of the few things she cooked that I actually enjoyed. Michael cleared his throat. Emily, we want you to know that there's no pressure. We understand this is overwhelming. Your mother kept your room exactly as it was, but we can change it however you want. Or if you need time before coming home, we understand that too. I want to come home, Emily said quickly. Then her eyes filled with tears. But I'm scared. I don't really know you anymore. I don't know Dayton. I don't know who Emily Rogers is supposed to be. For 10 years, I've been Melissa Carter. I don't know how to just stop being her. Susan reached across the table, taking Emily's hands in hers. Then don't. You don't have to stop being the person you've become. You just get to add to it. You're Emily Rogers, but you're also the young woman who survived something terrible and found the courage to escape. You're both, and we'll figure out together who you want to be going forward. Your mother's right, Michael added. There's no rule book for this situation, Pumpkin. We're all going to make mistakes and feel awkward and not know what to say sometimes. That's okay. What matters is that we're together again. They ordered lunch, and as they ate, the conversation slowly became less forced. Emily talked about books she'd read, about teaching herself to play guitar from YouTube videos during the brief periods when she had internet access, about a stray cat she'd befriended at one of the houses they'd lived in. Susan and Michael listened, absorbing every detail, beginning to understand the person their daughter had become. After lunch, they returned to Haven House, where a media circus had begun to form. News had leaked about Emily's discovery, and reporters were gathering outside, cameras ready, demanding statements. We need to address this, Agent Fraser said grimly. The story is going to break nationally within hours. I recommend we hold a brief press conference, allow the Rogers family to make a statement on their terms before the media narrative gets away from us. Emily's face went pale. I have to talk to reporters? I don't know if I can do that. You don't have to say anything, Susan assured her. Your father and I can handle it. You can stay inside, away from the cameras. But Emily shook her head. No. People need to know what happened. There might be other children out there, other families destroyed by this network. If talking to the press helps stop that, I need to do it. Dr. Chen pulled Emily aside. Emily, you've been through significant trauma. You don't owe the public your story. Not yet. Take time to heal first. I've been silent for 10 years, Emily replied, her voice stronger than it had been all day. I'm done being silent. The press conference was held at 4 p.m. on the steps of the Cincinnati Police Department's District 1 headquarters. Detective Brennan and Agent Fraser flanked the Rogers family, with Susan standing in the middle, Michael on one side, and Emily on the other. Susan stepped up to the microphone, her voice shaking but determined. On October 14, 2014, my daughter Emily Rogers disappeared while walking to school in Dayton, Ohio. For 9 years, 5 months, and 23 days, our family has lived in agony, not knowing if Emily was alive or dead. Today, thanks to the courage of my daughter and the dedication of law enforcement, Emily has come home. The crowd of reporters erupted with questions, but Susan raised her hand for silence. Emily has agreed to make a brief statement, but I need you all to understand that she is a victim. She is 19 years old and has survived something no child should ever experience. Please treat her with the respect and compassion she deserves. Emily stepped forward, her hands trembling as she gripped the podium. For a moment she seemed frozen, overwhelmed by the sea of cameras and faces. Then Susan placed a hand on her shoulder, and Emily drew strength from the touch. My name is Emily Ann Rogers, she began, her voice quiet but clear. For almost 10 years, I was held by people who stole me from my family and raised me under a false identity. They moved me constantly, isolated me and made me believe I was someone I wasn't. But even when I didn't consciously remember my real name or my real family, part of me always knew something was wrong. To other children who might be in similar situations, if something feels wrong, if your memories don't match what you're being told, trust your instincts. And to families with missing children, never stop looking, never stop hoping. My mother never gave up on me, and that's why I'm standing here today. The reporters erupted again with questions. Emily, can you tell us who took you? How did you escape? What do you remember about the day you disappeared? Agent Fraser stepped forward. That's all we'll be sharing today. This is an ongoing federal investigation into a child trafficking network that may involve multiple victims across several states. We're asking anyone with information about illegal adoptions or suspicious child placements between 2010 and 2024 to contact the FBI tip line. As they ushered Emily back inside, one reporter's question rang out above the others. Susan, what's the first thing you want to do now that Emily's home? Susan turned back, tears streaming down her face but a genuine smile breaking through. I want to take my daughter home, make her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with the breadcrumb topping she loved, and just be a family again. That's all we've ever wanted. Inside the police station, Emily collapsed into a chair, exhausted from the emotional toll of the day. Is it always going to be like this? Cameras and questions and everyone staring? For a while, Brennan admitted. This is a major story. Missing child cases that end happily are rare and the public is fascinated. But it will die down eventually. You'll get your privacy back. Michael knelt beside Emily's chair. And until then, we'll protect you. Whatever you need, however you need to handle this, we're here. That evening, Susan and Michael drove Emily back to Dayton, the 55-mile journey feeling both endless and too short. Emily sat in the back seat watching the landscape pass by, trying to reconcile fragmented memories with present reality. As they turned onto Maple Street, Emily's breath caught. I remember this street. I remember the trees. Susan pulled up in front of 847. The house where Emily had lived the first 9 years of her life. It looked smaller than Emily's hazy memories, but somehow exactly right. The porch light was on, and in the window a single candle burned. I've lit that candle every night since you disappeared, Susan said softly. Tonight you get to blow it out. You're home, baby. You're finally home. Emily stepped out of the car, looking up at the house that should have been her home all along. Neighbors had begun to emerge from their houses, drawn by the news that had spread through the community like wildfire. Mrs. Chen from next door, now elderly and using a walker, called out with tears in her eyes. Welcome home, Emily. Others echoed the sentiment. Welcome home. We never forgot you. Thank God you're safe. Emily waved shyly, overwhelmed by the outpouring of emotion from people she didn't remember, but who had clearly never forgotten her. Susan unlocked the front door, and Emily stepped inside. The house smelled like home, a scent she couldn't describe but recognized in her bones. Susan led her upstairs to the bedroom that had been preserved like a time capsule. Emily stood in the doorway, looking at the room of a 9-year-old girl. Stuffed animals lined the bed. A solar system poster hung on the wall. Books appropriate for a 4th grader filled the bookshelf. And there, sitting prominently on the pillow, was Mr. Hoppers, the stuffed rabbit she suddenly remembered with perfect clarity. She walked slowly to the bed and picked up Mr. Hoppers, holding him close. The fabric was worn, loved, familiar. I remember him. I remember everything about this room. We'll change it, Susan said quickly. Make it appropriate for who you are now. New furniture, new decorations, whatever you want. Emily clutched the rabbit. Can we keep it? Just for a while? I need to remember who I was before I can figure out who I'm supposed to be. Susan hugged her, both standing in that frozen childhood room, beginning the long, painful process of healing. The first week was a blur of doctor visits, therapy sessions, FBI interviews, and awkward family dinners. Susan took leave from work to stay close. Michael visited every evening while his wife Patricia gave him space to reconnect. Dr. Rebecca Chen referred Emily to Dr. Marcus Williams, a trauma specialist in Dayton. I don't even know how I feel, Emily confessed during their first session. I'm happy to be home, but I feel guilty. Caroline, my kidnapper, wasn't always cruel. She taught me, fed me. Sometimes she was kind. Dr. Williams nodded. That's called trauma bonding. Your brain attached to her for survival. Recognizing both the care and the harm doesn't erase what she did. Meanwhile, Susan started therapy with Dr. Patricia Monroe, who specialized in family trauma. I prayed for this miracle. Susan sobbed. So why am I so angry? Because you lost 10 years too, Dr. Monroe said. Emily's attachment to her captors feels like a betrayal, but it was how she survived. You're not competing with those years. You're rebuilding a bond with the woman she's become. The FBI investigation moved quickly. Caroline Carter was in custody. Richard Carter remained hospitalized. Agents Brennan and Frazier brought new evidence. A photo of Patricia Hendricks, the woman who lured Emily from the park. That's her, Emily said. She told me Mom was in the hospital. Her testimony would be crucial. You won't face them for months, Frazier assured her, and we'll prepare you. That evening, the smell of macaroni and cheese sparked Emily's first clear memory. You let me sprinkle the breadcrumbs, she said through tears. Susan laughed softly. And you added too much cheese. They held each other, grateful for that small piece of the past. That night, for the first time, they all sat at the kitchen table again. The silences were still heavy, but there were smiles too. Emily finally said, I want to meet other survivors. Dr. Williams mentioned a support group. Susan hesitated, then nodded. If that's what you need, we'll find one. At her first meeting, Emily listened quietly as others shared their stories. Children taken by relatives, friends, even foster parents. Their pain mirrored hers, but so did their resilience. And for the first time, Emily felt she wasn't alone. When it was Emily's turn to speak, her voice trembled. I was taken at 9 and raised by my kidnappers until I was 19. I escaped 2 weeks ago. Everyone wants me to be the Emily Rogers who disappeared, but that girl is gone, and I can't be Melissa Carter either. So who am I? Jennifer replied gently. Whoever you choose to be. That's the gift of survival. Those words stayed with her. As media attention slowly faded, Emily and Susan declined every interview and offer. On May 1st, they held a quiet celebration for Emily's 19th birthday, the first one she'd spent truly free. As she blew out her candles, Susan realized she was seeing not the child she lost, but the young woman she'd become. I wished for peace, Emily said later. For all of us. It'll come, Susan said softly, because we're together. By mid-May, the FBI made arrests in the trafficking network. Patricia Hendricks was caught in Oregon, and Vincent Drayton agreed to testify, exposing dozens of illegal placements. Your courage made this possible, Agent Frazier told Emily. On May 15th, Caroline Carter was charged with kidnapping and trafficking. Despite warnings, Emily insisted on attending the arraignment. As Caroline entered in shackles, Emily saw not a monster but a small, broken woman. For 10 years she ruled my life, Emily told her mother afterward. Today she looked pathetic. She is, Susan said, and she'll spend her life in prison. In the weeks that followed, Emily began to reclaim herself, taking GED classes, seeing Dr. Williams, and reconnecting with her childhood friend Ashley. She discovered a love for photography, wandering Dayton with her new camera, finding beauty in forgotten places. During therapy, Emily redefined her birthday wish. I think I was asking for permission, to be okay with not being okay, to feel anger and love, to be myself without expectations. Dr. Williams smiled. You already have that permission. On June 20th, Emily asked to visit Lincoln Park, the place where it all began. The swings were still there, rusted but unchanged. She sat down and whispered, "This is where I trusted her, but I was 9. I wasn't responsible." Susan nodded through tears. Emily stood as the sun set. "It's just a park, it doesn't have power over me anymore." When she said, "Can we go home now?" it was the first time she said home without hesitation. Home was Maple Street, the kitchen, the laughter, her mother's love, her father's steady presence. After 10 years of being lost, Emily Rogers was finally home.